Did you say that COVID-19 was a genetically engineered bioweapon that targets black and white people, but spared Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people?
I didn't say it was deliberately targeted. I just quoted and made fun.
Did you say Lyme disease is a highly likely militarily engineered bioweapon?
I probably did say that. I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You and I, you have said
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine companies.
No.
Pharmaceutical companies.
You have clearly stated in the past that bodily autonomy is one of your core values. When was it that you decided to sell out the values you've had your whole life in order to be given power by President Trump?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy.
He's just, oh, come on, bro. He's just on autopilot. He's phoning it in with that one, bro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin my questions, I'd like to start by entering into the record a letter the committee received from Ambassador Carolyn Kennedy outlining what she believes Kennedy's lack of personal fitness for the office.
Without objection.
Mr. Kennedy, you have spent years pushing
this one's spicy
stories about vaccines. You say one thing and then you say another. In your testimony today under oath, you denied that you were
It's a bit. It has to be a bit.
But during a podcast interview,
him breathing into the mic, it has to be a bit. He's doing it to f with us intentionally.
No vaccine is safe and effective. In your testimony today, in order to prove you're not anti-vax,
gotta be a bit, right?
Note that all your kids are vaccinated. But in a podcast in 2020, you said, and I quote, you would do anything, pay anything.
I can't, you guys.
And not vaccinate your kids. Mr. Kennedy, all of these things cannot be true. So, are you lying to Congress today when you say you are pro-vaccine? Or did you lie on all those podcasts? We have all of this on tape, by the way.
Yeah, Senator, as you know, because it's been repeatedly debunked, that statement that I made on the Lex Friedman podcast was a fragment of the statement. He asked me, and anybody who actually goes and looks at that podcast and will see this. He asked me, are there vaccines that are safe and effective? And I said to him, some of the live virus vaccines are. And I said, there are no vaccines that are safe and effective, and I was going to continue for every person. Every medicine has people who are sensitive to them, including vaccines.
Right, so
he interrupted me at that point. I've corrected it many times, including on national TV. You know about this, Senator Wyden, so bringing this up right now is dishonest.
Let's be clear about what you've actually done then, since you want to deny your statements. For example, you have a history of trying to take vaccines away from people. In May of 2021, you petitioned the Food and Drug Administration to not only block Americans from having access to the COVID vaccine, but to prevent any future access to the life-saving vaccine. Are you denying that? Your name is on the petition.
We brought that petition after CDC recommended the COVID vaccine without any scientific basis for 6-year-old children. Most experts agree today, even the people who did it back then, that COVID vaccines are inappropriate for 6-year-old children who basically have a zero risk from COVID. That's why I brought that lawsuit. I don't want to, I want to emphasize
Mr. Kennedy, the facts.
The committee will be in order. And to the audience. Hold on for a second, Mr. Kennedy. To the audience. Comments from the audience are inappropriate and out of order. And if there are any further disruptions, the committee will recess until the police can restore order.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
Please follow the rules of the committee. Mr. Kennedy, you may proceed.
I also want to point out that your recitation of what happened in Samoa is absolutely wrong, and you know it's wrong.
We'll get to that in a moment. Right now, we're talking about the petition that you
Are these Republican plants
from having access to the vaccine and to prevent
to intentionally derail the hearing?
those facts are on the record. My third
Is anyone else having that thought?
is, you made almost $5 million from book deals, mostly promoting junk science. In 2021, in a book called The Measles Book, you wrote that parents had been, quote, misled into believing that measles is a deadly disease and that measles vaccines are necessary, safe, and effective. The reality is measles are in fact deadly and highly contagious, something that you should have learned after your lies contributed to the deaths of 83 people, most of them children, in a measles outbreak in Samoa. So my question here is, Mr. Kennedy, is measles deadly, yes or no?
The death rate from measles historically in this country in 1963, the year before the introduction of the vaccine, was 1 in 10,000. Let me explain what happened in Samoa. In Samoa in 2017 or 2015, there were 2 kids who died following the MMR vaccine.
Nope.
And
Nope.
And the vaccination rates in Samoa dropped.
Nope. They thought that. It was actually the nurses gave them the wrong medicine.
And in
He's lying.
2018,
This is a lie.
kids died following the MMR
This is a lie. He's lying.
And Samoa banned the MMR vaccine. I arrived a year later when vaccination rates were already below any previous level. I went there, nothing to do with vaccines. I went there to introduce a medical informatics system that would digitalize records in Samoa and make health delivery much more efficient. I never gave any public statement about vaccines.
I wish the senator was prepared to push back against this.
Who will say,
Tell me Wyden knows the deal. Tell me, okay?
2019, the measles outbreak started in August. Oh, clearly I had nothing to do with the measles. Not only
Please
that,
tell me Wyden.
not only that, if you let me finish,
You
Senator.
have had some time.
If you let me finish, Senator. If you let me finish.
Oh, no. God damn it.
80 people died.
You know what, man? I'm with you guys. I'm black-pilled on Democrats.
Sent to New Zealand.
Democrats, bro.
Most of those people did not have measles. We don't know what was killing them. The same outbreak.
If you're going to jump into the lion's den with someone like RFK Jr., you need to know the facts. Don't attack him on something if you haven't done the prep to know the facts.
Time back. The nominee wrote a book saying that people had been misled into believing that measles is a deadly disease. He's trying now to play down his role in Samoa.
He should have.
That's not what the parents say. That's not what Governor Green says. It's time to make sure that we blow the whistle on actually what your views are. At least we're starting.
We need to move on.
Somebody, you should be able to push back.
Vaccine. I support the polio vaccine. I will do nothing as HHS secretary that makes it difficult or discourages people from taking.
There were 2 nurses in Samoa that Americans.
You wrote saying parents have been misled into believing that measles is a deadly disease. That's not true.
We need to move on. Senator Grass.
There were 2 nurses in Samoa, American Samoa, that gave babies the wrong medication, and it killed them. And they initially thought that it was the polio vaccine, or I'm sorry, the measles vaccine. And then it came out, oh shit, we actually gave them, I don't know, I'm going to make something up, morphine, it was something like that. But by the time the truth came out, an anti-vax kind of movement had sprung up in American Samoa. And RFK Jr. had swung in and made himself like a little miniature micro celebrity on that island and got involved in politics and was like pushing anti-vax politicians and like trying to start an anti-vax movement, sort of springboarding off of this news story that happened. But it was wrong. The kids did not die because of a measles vaccine. I find myself just really frustrated with Democrats right now. Like really frustrated. Like we need you at your A game, like whoever the next Democrat speaking is should call attention to the fact that he's lying about this number. You know what I mean? They should know. Like they should know. They should know the Republican talking points and they should know how to debunk them. And more importantly, they should know how to debunk them in a way that's like really flashy and plays well on television. Cause that's like a part of this, a part of politics. And like when you let a lie like that just out there you let it go unchecked, people take it at face value. That's why you have to call out the lies. It's so important. call out the lies. It's especially important in the Trump era. I mean, the Trump era is defined by just a fire hose of lies, of egregious lies. And so what we need out of like the Democrats right now, what we need out of the opposition party right now, we need people who are sharp. We need people who are sharp, who are effective communicators, who are equipped to push back against this stuff. And right now, I'm not seeing a lot of that in the Democratic Party.
Or 25% of the global population.
You have all these staffers, you know, like you have all these staffers, and it's like, that's like to help you with this stuff. Like your staffers should be sitting you down and being like, we anticipate that he's going to say this and this and this, and this is a lie, and this is where, and this is a trap that he's walking into. So if he says this, you really need to pounce with this. Like you need that level of preparedness for this kind of thing. Because this is a war. To borrow terminology from Alex Jones, it's an information war.
And Mr. Kennedy, I just have there are many things in the record, but I hope that you could answer these questions yes or no. I've tried to ask these in a manner that's faithful to what you actually said, because I didn't want to have a debate about whether you actually said them. So I'm asking you yes or no, Mr. Kennedy. Did you say that COVID-19 was a genetically engineered bioweapon that targets black and white people, but spared Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people?
I didn't say it was deliberately targeted. I just quoted NIH-funded and NIH published study.
Did you say that it targets black and white people but spared Ashkenazi Jews?
I quoted a study, Your Honor. I quoted an NIH study that showed
I'll take that as a
certain
yes.
races
I have to move on. I have to move on. Did you say that Lyme disease is highly likely a materially engineered bioweapon? I made sure I put in the highly likely. Did you say Lyme disease is a highly likely militarily engineered bioweapon?
I probably did say that.
Did you say that? Okay. I want all of our colleagues to hear it, Mr. Kennedy. I want them to hear it. You said yes.
Here we go. This is
Did you say
better.
that exposure to pesticides causes children to become transgender?
No, I never said that.
Okay, I have the record that I'll give to the chairman, and he can make his judgment about what you said. Did you write in your book, and it's undeniable, that African AIDS is an entirely different disease from Western AIDS? Yes or no, Mr. Kennedy?
I'm not sure if I made that.
Okay, I'll give it to the chairman, Mr. Kennedy. And my final question, did you say on a podcast, and I quote, "I wouldn't leave abortion, to the states. My belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have the government involved, even if it's full term." Did you say that, Mr. Kennedy?
Senator, I believe that every abortion is a tragedy.
Did you say it, Mr. Kennedy? This
believe-
matters. It doesn't matter what you come here and say that isn't true, that's not reflective of what you really believe, that you haven't said over decade after decade after decade, because unlike other jobs we're confirming around this place, this is a job where it is life and death for the kids that I used to work for in the Denver public schools, and for families all over this country that are suffering from living in the richest country of the world that can't deliver basic health care and basic mental health care to them. It's too important for the games that you're playing, Mr. Kennedy. And I hope my colleagues will say to the president, I have no influence over him. I hope my colleagues will say to the president, out of 330 million Americans, we can do better than this.
Thank you. We need to move on.
There you go. Better.
As I said to Senator Langford, I think it's immoral to have a policy where patients are not allowed to report adverse events and where doctors are discouraged from doing that. President Trump has asked me to study the safety of mifepristone. He has not yet taken a stand on how to regulate it. Whatever he does, I will implement those policies, and I will work with this committee, make those policies make sense.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Senator Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Wyden, and welcome, Mr. Kennedy, and to your family as well. I want to start with a couple of concerns I have, and just briefly, on Medicaid. States share in the funding of Medicaid. Millions of disabled children in this country are alive because of Medicaid. Millions of people with addiction in this country are in recovery because of the services provided to them by Medicaid. And millions of chronically ill people who, until Medicaid expansion was enacted, who couldn't get health care and therefore couldn't work because they were too sick, got health care through Medicaid expansion, then went back to work, and now they're on private insurance. So those are some facts about Medicaid that you might want to brush up on. Now, I'm also extremely concerned about your endorsement of radical fringe conspiracies that, if implemented at HHS, would put American families' lives at risk. Vaccines are one of our greatest public health triumphs. And you don't need, I'm not talking about abstract medical science. One of the people who helped raise me was my grandfather, who was a pediatrician. He practiced medicine in this country from 1921 until the mid-1980s. And I heard details about the difference those vaccines made in saving lives in the children who were under his care. Vaccination has helped to eradicate many deadly diseases in the United States, including polio and smallpox, something we should be proud of as Americans. I am extremely concerned that as Secretary, you would be able to halt critical vaccine research and to exploit parents' natural worries by advising them not to vaccinate their children. This will lead to more children getting sick, and some will even die. Before the measles vaccine, about 500 American children died a year from measles. This is too much of a risk for our country, and there is no reason that any of us should believe that you have reversed the anti-vaccine views that you have promoted for 25 years. For example, you have previously falsely suggested that the polio vaccine killed many, 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 many more people than polio ever did by causing fatal cancers, while rigorous safety studies show that to be completely false. Now, let's go to something we agree upon. I am really heartened to see that one area where we agree on is on women's reproductive freedom. In your own words, it's not the government's place to tell people what to do with their bodies.
Oh, dear.
You said that, correct? Yep. Mr. Kennedy, in 2023, you came to New Hampshire and said, quote, I'm pro-choice. I don't think the government has any business telling people what they can or cannot do with their body. So you said that, right?
Yes.
Yep. But you also said we need to trust the women to make that choice because I don't trust government to make any choices. You said that too, right?
Yes.
It is remarkable that you have such a long record of fighting for women's reproductive freedom, and really great that my Republican colleagues are so open to voting for a pro-choice HHS secretary. So, Mr. Kennedy, I'm confused. You have clearly stated in the past that bodily autonomy is one of your core values. The question is, do you stand for that value or not? When was it that you decided to sell out the values you've had your whole life in order to be given power by President Trump?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy.
He's just, oh, come on, bro.
Right, so, but
He's just on autopilot. He's phoning it in with that one, bro.
My question is,
You said that 3 times now.
when did you decide to sell out your life's work and values to get this position?
Senator, I agree with President Trump.
No.
Every abortion is a
Or
tragedy.
it's,
So
oh my
what you're
God.
telling us, just to be clear, because my time is limited, is that regardless of what you believe, regardless of what values you have, if President Trump tells you to do something, you're going to do it. You said just now the discussion about mifepristone. Oh, he's asked me to study the safety of it. Here are the safety studies that tell us mifepristone is safe and effective. And I asked Mr. Chair that these about 40 studies be admitted to the record.
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every
So
abortion is
the studies are there.
He's just
The safety
phoning it
is
in.
proved. The science is there. But what you're telling us is if President Trump orders you to take action to make it harder for women to get direly needed health care, you'll follow his order. If Mr. Trump, as he did yesterday, orders a halt on Medicaid payments that are essential for taking care of people with disabilities all around this country, you're going to follow that order because you are willing to sacrifice your values, your knowledge, if President Trump tells you to do that. That, to me, is unacceptable in a Secretary of Health and Human Services.
As I explained before, the White House has issued a statement saying that that policy will not deprive any American
Yeah,
of
the
benefits.
problem is the White House issued that statement only after we pointed out the damage it would do, and it became politically uncomfortable for them. You know what else that freeze on federal funding did? It halted funds for critical research that could cure pediatric cancer. So if the president tells you to do that, you're going to stop that too. That's enough.
Thank you. Senator Cortez Masto.
Bit of a bulldog.
I can't say as I'm surprised by the hostility on the other side. I'm highly disappointed in it. I don't know if you remember when you called me up and you were contemplating setting your political differences aside, joining forces with President Trump on an area of agreement, addressing chronic illness, trying to find the root cause of all these problems facing this nation. My first response was, Bobby, this is an answer to my prayers. We need to get to the answers of this, but even more, we need to heal and unify this divided nation. I'm not necessarily the most optimistic guy because we've got enormous challenges facing this nation. I thought, wow.
Was that the tone you were taking when Joe Biden was president? F off. This shit is so disingenuous.
Coming together with President Trump.
Go f yourself. Do you understand? I'm never gonna fuck. And there are tens of millions of Americans like me. We're never gonna unite with you. Ever in a million years. It's not gonna happen. No. Off the table. No. And I'm not gonna fucking condescend you with this bullshit. Like, I'm not gonna come to you in 4 years if some Democrat wins and say, come on, let's get together and unite. I'm not gonna insult your intelligence by proposing that we, like, no, absolutely not. No.
Can't we come together as a nation and do this?
No.
Aren't you getting tired of this? I'm getting tired of this.
No, I'm not tired.
Mr. Kennedy.
I've got the stamina.
I need to enter in the record.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Kennedy, I want to start with something that I think you and I agree on, and that is that Big Pharma has too much power in Washington. You've said that President Trump asked you to, quote, clean up corruption and conflicts. Sounds great. You've said that you will, quote, slam shut the revolving door between government agencies and the companies they regulate. That also sounds great. So here's an easy question. Will you commit that when you leave this job, you will not accept compensation from a drug company, a medical device company, a hospital system, or a health insurer for at least 4 years, including as a lobbyist or a board member?
Can you just repeat the last part of the question? Can I commit
You're
to
not
what?
going to take money from drug companies in any way, shape, or form.
Who? Me?
Yes, you.
Oh. Yeah, I'm happy to commit to that.
Okay, good. That's what I figured. I said it's an easy question to start with. And I think you're right on this question.
I don't think any of them want to give me money, by the way.
Let's keep going. You're right because to say yes, because every American has the right to know that every decision you make as our #1 health officer is to help them and not to make money for yourself in the future. So I want to talk more about money. I'm looking at your paperwork right now. In the past 2 years, you've raked in $2.5 million from a law firm called Wisner Baum. You go online, you do commercials to encourage people to sign up with Wisner Baum to join lawsuits against vaccine makers. And for everyone who signs up, you personally get paid. And if they win their case, you get 10% of what they win. So if you bring in somebody who gets $10 million, you walk away with $1 million. Now, you just said that you want the American people to know you can't be bought. Your decisions won't depend on
what a grift
you could make in the future. You won't go to work for a drug company after you leave HHS. But you and I both know there's another way to make money. So, Mr. Kennedy, will you also agree that you won't take any compensation from any lawsuits against drug companies while you are secretary and for 4 years afterwards.
Well, I'll certainly commit to that while I'm secretary. But I do want to clarify something because you're making me sound like a shill.
Wow. Yeah.
I put
You're the
together
one who
that
got-
case. I did the Science Day presentation to the judge on that case to get it into court, the
Mr.
Daubert
Kennedy,
hearing.
Mr. Kennedy, it's just a really simple question.
Yeah,
You've taken in $2.5 million. I want to know if you will commit right now that not only will you not go to work for drug companies, you won't go to work suing the drug companies and taking your rake out of that while you're secretary and for 4 years after. It's just,
I'll commit to not taking any fees from drug companies while I'm secretary.
No. That's not the question.
I'm asking about fees from suing drug companies. Will you agree not to do that?
You're asking me to not sue drug companies,
No,
and I'm
you
not
can
going to agree
sue
to that,
drug
Senator.
companies as much as you want.
I'm not going
He's talking about profiting.
for anybody.
So
He's not-
let's do a quick count here of how, as Secretary of HHS, if you get confirmed, you could influence every one of those lawsuits. Well, let me start the list. You could publish your anti-vaccine conspiracies, but this time on U.S. government letterhead, something a jury might be impressed by. You could appoint
I
people
don't
to the
understand that.
CDC vaccine panel who share your anti-vax
It's an
views and let them do your
obvious
dirty work. You could
conflict
tell
of
the
interest.
CDC vaccine panel to remove
There's been
a
reporting on
particular
this.
vaccine
It's an
from the
obvious
vaccine
conflict of
schedule.
interest.
You could remove vaccines from special compensation programs, which would open up manufacturers to mass torts. You could make more injuries eligible for compensation, even if there is no causal evidence. You could change vaccine court processes to make it easier to bring junk lawsuits. You could turn over FDA.
Mm-hmm. It is a
data to your friends at the law
blatant
firm, and they could
conflict
use
of
it
interest,
however it
yes.
benefited them. You could change vaccine labeling. You could change vaccine information rules. You could change which claims are compensated in the vaccine injury compensation program. There's a lot of ways that you can influence those future lawsuits
Yes.
and pending lawsuits while you are Secretary of HHS.
Yes.
And I'm asking you to commit right now that you will not take a financial stake in every one of those lawsuits so that what you do as secretary
Yes.
will also benefit you financially down
Yes.
the line.
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's
that
not
I'm-
the question. You and I, you have said
You're asking me,
repeatedly,
Senator,
those
you're
efforts
asking me not to sue
requirements are-
vaccine
No.
pharmaceutical
I am
companies.
not. My
Yeah, you
question
are.
is stop
That's exactly what
enriching
you're doing.
health. Look, no one should be fooled here.
I
As
fought
Secretary
from-
of HHS, Robert Kennedy will have the power to undercut vaccines and vaccine manufacturing across our country. And for all of his talk about follow the science and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids, the bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Senator, I support vaccines. I support the childhood schedule. I will do that. The only thing I want is good science, and that's it.
How about then say you won't make money off what you do as Secretary of HHS?
Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kennedy, thanks for being with us. I very much like the slogan that you coined, Make America Healthy Again. And I strongly agree with that effort. Despite spending, as you indicated, 2 or 3 times as much per capita on healthcare as other nations, we have 85 million people who are uninsured, underinsured. We have all kinds of chronic illnesses. Our life expectancy is lower than other countries. And for working class people in this country, they are living 6, 7 years shorter lives than the top 1%. We got a problem, okay? And I'm going to suggest some ideas that I think can remedy that. Last year, the insurance industry in this country made over $70 billion. What while at the same time 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. Do you agree with me that the United States should join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Yes? No?
Senator, I can't give you a yes or no answer to that question.
Health care a human right? Is health care a human right?
In the way that free speech is a human right,
Yeah.
I would say it's different because with free speech doesn't cost anybody anything, but in healthcare, if you smoke cigarettes for 20 years and you get cancer, you are now taking from the pool.
Well,
and so are you guaranteed the same right, or is there also a duty?
I'm sorry. I'd love to talk for an hour with you. We got a few minutes left here. All right. Every other country on earth says healthcare, whether you're poor or rich, young or old, is a human right. I'm not hearing you say that. All right. You've talked about the drug companies, and maybe we agree on this one. As you all know, despite the drug companies making over $100 billion in profits, paying CEOs outrageous compensation packages, we, in some cases, pay 10 times more for the same drug. Will you support legislation that I will introduce which says that in America we should not be paying a nickel more for prescription drugs than people around the rest of the world? Yes, no?
To equalize it?
Not to equalize it, that we should not be paying more than other countries for the same damn drug.
President Trump has asked me, in fact, I had a meeting with President Trump a week ago where we showed him the charts.
He knows the charts.
We're paying 10 times more from Europe.
That's right. And are you going to commit to us that you will end that absurdity?
I think in principle we can. We should end that disparity.
Good. Okay. That's great. All right. I happen to believe that climate change is real, it's an existential threat, and it is a health care issue. Donald Trump thinks that it is a hoax originating in China. Question is, in your judgment,
Mr. Environmental Lawyer?
Change a hoax, or is it real, causing devastating problems?
President Trump and I, from the beginning, from our first meeting, agreed to disagree on that issue. I believe climate change is existential. My job is to make Americans healthy again.
All right, you believe that, you disagree with Trump, you don't think climate change is a hoax, is what I'm hearing.
My job here is to make
I'll just ask you that,
Americans healthy.
Mr. Kennedy, not a trick question.
I answered your question, Senator Sanders.
Okay, you disagree with the president on that.
I answered your question.
Okay. I'm going to pick up on a point that Senator Hassan made. Look, there is no question that abortion is a divisive issue in this country. I would say a majority of the people are pro-choice. There's a strong minority who are pro-life. A year and a half ago, you went to New Hampshire, running for president, gave a speech, and you talked about government should not tell a woman what she can do with her own body. That's her choice. Now, I think everybody on that side is pro-life. I think everybody here is pro-choice. I have never seen any major politician flip on that issue quite as quickly as you did when Trump asked you to become HHS secretary. Tell me why you think people should have confidence in your consistency and in your word when you really made a major U-turn on an issue of that importance in such a short time.
Senator, I believe, and I've always believed, that every abortion is a tragedy.
He said that
I told the people of New Hampshire that
times.
it was their right. All right, let me do a last question here because I'm running out of time. I think the gist of what you're trying to say today is you're really pro-vaccine, you want to ask questions. You have started a group called the Children's Health Defense. You're the originator. Right now, as I understand it, on their website, they are selling what's called onesies. These are little things, clothing for babies. One of them is titled Unvaxxed, Unafraid. Next one, and they're sold for $26 a piece, by the way. Next one is No Vax, No Problem. Now, you're coming before this committee and you say you're pro-vaccine. Just want to ask some questions. And yet your organization is making money selling a child's product to parents for $26, which casts fundamental doubt on the usefulness of vaccines. Can you tell us now that you will, now that you are pro-vaccine, that you're going to have your organization take these products off the market?
Senator, I have no power over that organization. I'm not part of it. I resigned from the board.
That was just a few months ago. You founded that. You certainly have power. You can make that call. Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing to do with
Are you
leadership.
supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive of vaccines.
Are you supportive of this clothing, which is militantly anti-vaccine?
I am supportive of vaccines. I will. I want good science, and I want to protect.
But you will not tell the organization you founded not to continue selling that product. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There is new reporting on like a secret audio recording that RFK Jr. took. Is there an actual, do we have the recording itself or no? It was, he was secretly recording a conversation with his ex-wife after it was discovered that he had cheated on her with like dozens of women. RFK secret recording. Do we have the actual reporting? It's important to note that the only reason that we know that RFK Jr. had a brain worm was because it came out in court filings related to his divorce proceedings. The reason we know that he had brain worms was because he claimed in court that he was limited in how much alimony he could give his ex-wife because he had brain worms that affected his cognitive abilities. That's why we know about the brain worms. He told a court, well, I would pay my ex-wife more, but I have brain worms and it's impacted my ability to generate income. To be honest with you, it's highly unlikely that he ever even had brain worms, to be honest, unless he presented some kind of like actual evidence. RFK Jr. told his second wife, Mary Richardson Kennedy, that it was her own fault he cheated on her with dozens of women, according to secret recordings he made of the conversations during their bitter divorce. I want to be in a monogamous relationship. I don't want to be in a polygamous relationship. I think that's wrong. He told her in a June 2011 recording obtained by Mother Jones magazine. But then why have you done it for 10 years? Asked Richardson, who had found a diary listing 37 of her husband's infidelities. I did it because I was being abused at home, Kennedy replied. It was just one of more than 60 conversations that President Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services secretly recorded, according to Mother Jones. At least one recording appeared to have been made when Kennedy was in California, a state that requires both parties to consent to a recording, the site reported. He apparently used the recordings to compile a 60-page affidavit accusing Richardson of violent outbursts, excessive drinking, physical abuse, and threatening suicide in front of their children. Richardson, in turn, prepared a previously unreported point-by-point rebuttal, saying Kennedy, quote, has been stealthily tape recording phone conversations in my home, according to Mother Jones. She died by suicide in May 2012. Well, without ever filing the rebuttal in court. In the document, Richardson admitted she had once lost her temper and hit Kennedy, but she denied many of his allegations, including that she had ever talked about killing herself in front of her kids. Her husband was waging a scorched earth campaign against her, she said. She also alleged Kennedy had physically abused her and was abusing prescription medicine, had lied to her about the extent of his infidelity, was a bad father. She also called him a sexual deviant and a sex addict. Said she had texts and photos from his phone related to his affairs. I've witnessed Bobby's obsessive compulsive need to not only beat but annihilate someone he perceives as an adversary, she wrote. He rejiggers the facts or makes them up and rushes to tell as many people as he can so that is the version of reality that gets distributed in people's minds. Classic gaslighting. Kennedy did not respond to multiple requests for comment from Mother Jones. The Daily Beast has reached out to Kennedy's representatives for comment. According to Vanity Fair, Richardson's family has always privately believed Kennedy's behavior contributed to her death. In September 2013, Kennedy's 2001 sex diary was leaked to the New York Post. In the back of a nearly 400-page red notebook, he listed 37 women and, using a scale of 1 to 10, noted which sex acts they'd done. Who does that? That is Crazy.
I want to talk to you first about the CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I'm proud of the work that the CDC does, proud that it's located in Georgia with more than 10,000 employees in my state. If confirmed, you would be the cabinet secretary over the CDC. Representing HHS, it's about 29% of the federal budget. CDC is a part of that. Do you agree that the CDC's work is critical to Georgia, critical for our country, and the health of the entire world?
Yes, Senator.
Senator Isaacson, my Republican predecessor, would have agreed with that. Bless his memory. He was a fierce advocate for the CDC, as am I. The CDC is an agency filled with hard-working, dedicated public health servants. They wake up every single day working to keep us safe. I think we don't think often enough about their work, because it's easy not to celebrate the folks who are protecting you from that which doesn't appear because of the work that they're doing. So grateful for the work that the CDC employees do. Some of them are members of my church. I saw that deep commitment firsthand when I visited the CDC just last
Is
summer.
Warnock still a practicing minister?
Compared the CDC's work to Nazi death camps. You've compared it to sexual abusers in the Catholic Church. You've also said that many of them belong, this is a direct quote, many of them belong in jail. For me, those are disturbing characterizations of the CDC workers that I know who are trying to keep the American public safe every single day. And as you are presented as the nominee for this position, I need to know, do you stand by those statements that you made in the past, or do you retract those previous statements?
Senator, I don't believe that I ever compared the CDC to Nazi death camps. I support the CDC. My job is not.
Hold on. I'll bet you I can find it.
CDC. My job is to empower the scientists if I'm privileged to be confirmed.
So you retract those statements?
I'm not retracting it. I never said it.
Well, actually, I have a transcript.
Of me saying that it's a Nazi death camp?
Let me read your words. It says that the institution CDC and the vaccine program, is your description of their work, is more important than the children that it's supposed to protect. And you know, it's the same reason we had a pedophile scandal in the Catholic Church. It's because people were able to convince themselves that the institution of the church was more important than these little boys and girls who were being raped. That's pretty provocative language. You said in another statement to me, this is like Nazi death camp. I mean, let me finish. I'm just reading your words. I mean, what happened to these kids? 1 in 31 boys in this country, their minds are being robbed from them.
Yeah, I was not comparing the CDC to Nazi death camps. I was comparing the injury rate to our children to other atrocities.
Oh my God!
And I wouldn't compare of course, the CDC to Nazi death camps to the extent that any statement that I made has been interpreted that way. Yeah, I don't agree with that. In 2003, the United States Congress Government Oversight Committee ended an over a year investigation.
Azilian with the primer. Thank you so much.
And used almost that same language. They said that the CDC, just one division, one branch, the Immunization Safety Office, had put institutional self-interest and pharmaceutical profits ahead of the welfare and the health of American children. So that was a conclusion by Congress. And I repeated that.
I'm asking you because you're the nominee for HHS. It sounds like you stand by those statements.
Senator, my objective is to support the CDC. There's nothing I'm going to do that is going to harm CDC. I want to make sure that our science is gold standard science, and it's free from that same government oversight investigation committee found that the panels, the ACIP panel within CDC, I think 97% of the people on it had conflicts. I don't believe that that's right. I think we need to end those conflicts and make sure that scientists are doing unobstructed science.
So I want to enter this statement, by the way, into the record without objection.
Without objection.
Last week, the White House gagged HHS and the CDC, preventing them from communicating
thank you.
important public health information to anyone, including all of our allies, including our allies in the United States and global disease prevention. Can you just answer yes or no, because I'm running out of time? Do you agree with that action?
I was not consulted on it, but that's pretty much standard
I'm asking
operating
you,
procedure for incoming administration.
So you agree with the action that gagged HHS and CDC from communicating important public health information to the
That
public?
directive made sure that no public health, that only non-essential travel and mass communications were temporarily suspended pending the
As bird flu just ravages farming on the East Coast.
I get it.
The gag
I think what we've
HHS.
seen over the last several days is standard operation for new administration. I think we're seeing some unprecedented actions, but you agree with it. Last night, members of the CDC, along with other federal employees, were actually invited.
There's also a tuberculosis outbreak in Kansas. That's true.
And I got text messages and folks I know work from the CDC, for the CDC, that do this important work, who got that note. And it's really important because my experience is that when you send out that kind of note, the folks who resign,
Thank you so much for the primer.
folks who you least likely want to see resign.
Good morning, Rooney.
Options. They're gifted folks. They got a lot of expertise. They have options. A lot of them are doing this work because of their patriotism, because of their commitment. Do you agree with the buyouts that were presented to CDC employees just last night?
I agree. At the vast majority of the scientists and experts at CDC are patriots and good government servants.
Can you tell me yes or no?
I don't think anybody's going to resign who's committed to making America healthy
Can
again.
you just answer yes? Okay, you agree with the buyouts. In our meeting, I asked you to confirm your support for the Affordable Care Act. You also mentioned that you and President Trump want to fix the ACA by making premiums more affordable. Can you answer me yes or no, as I don't have a lot of time? Did you know that tax credits that help families afford health insurance and save Georgians an average of $531 per month per person are set to expire at the end of the year? Did you know that?
I do.
We need to move on.
Do you support Congress extending these tax credits so that Americans can continue to afford health care?
Congress has to make its own decisions about that. My instructions from President
Mr. Chairman,
Trump
you're saying I'm running
is
out
to
of
make
time, but I'm having a lot of trouble getting the witness to answer yes or no to a yes or no question.
Well,
And I've got one more question.
you're almost at 9 minutes, sir.
Well, I need him to answer yes or no. Yes or no? Do you
I'm not going
support?
to answer yes or no to a question that's not susceptible to an honest yes or no answer.
Okay, I can't
We
get an
need to
answer.
move on.
Pretty alpha move there.
I think that the fact that you find it difficult to answer basic questions is deeply troubling for me as you present yourself as a nominee to run HHS. Thank you so very much.
Senator Smith.
I've been in courts all over the country, and prosecutors.
Mr. Chairman, you told me I'm out of time, and the witness continues to filibuster even after I said I'm done.
So, Mr. Kennedy, I don't have a question for you on abortion. I think that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle have covered this, but I want to say I can respect people who have different views than mine on this issue, but it's hard for me to respect people who won't give a straight answer to what they think on this issue in particular. Mr. Chair, I just want to note that I understand that anti-choice advocates have said that in these hearings they were looking to hear Mr. Kennedy provide some reassurance that he is on their side, and I'm not hearing that. And I think most Americans are looking for some hint that the decisions that people make about abortion should be personal and private, and they should be free to make those decisions without government interference, and I'm not hearing that either. To make it worse, The answers that you have given tell me that the Trump administration is more than willing to restrict or even ban medication abortion without a single act of Congress, and even in states where abortion is legal. And what is clear to me is that you and President Trump are dangerous to women's access to mifepristone. So having said that, I want to move to a different topic. Mr. Kennedy, I appreciate Senator Cornyn's questions about mental and behavioral health, something that I care a lot about. I know that you and your family have had personal experience with mental health challenges, as have I. And I agree that the mental health crisis in this country is a crisis. So let me ask you, in an interview in 2023 and again in 2024, you blamed school shootings on antidepressants. You said, and this is a quote, "There is no time in American history or human history that kids were going to shoot schools and shooting their classmates. It really started happening coterminous with the introduction of these drugs, with Prozac and with other drugs." So do you believe, as you've said, that antidepressants cause school shootings? This should be a simple question.
I don't think anybody can answer that question, and I didn't answer that question. I said it should be studied.
So your answer is?
I said it should be studied along with other potential culprits, like
So they may cause.
social media. But I don't know. I would never make, because there's no science on that,
Well,
Senator.
there is, Senator, there is, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you for the promotion.
The science shows that there is no link between school shootings and antidepressants. And in fact, most school shooters were not even treated with antidepressants. And of those that were, there was no evidence of association. You know,
I don't think you
my
can say
question
that,
is-
Senator, because of HIPAA rules, nobody knows.
well, that is, Mr. Kennedy, do you think that people who take antidepressants are dangerous?
I think, listen, I'm not going into HHS if I'm privileged to be confirmed with any.
So you can't say that people
to
who-
impose any preconceived ideas that I may have. I just want to have
Okay,
good science.
So you're not saying that they aren't dangerous, which means that they could be dangerous. Let me ask you this.
That's not true.
You've described Americans who take mental health medications as addicts who need to be sent to wellness farms to recover. Is that what you believe?
No, of course, I didn't say that
Yes, you
anybody should be compelled to do anything.
No, but
I'm
you
for-
said they should be sent.
I said they should be available to them. I didn't say they should be sent.
You said that folks
Kicking and
that take
screaming.
antidepressants are like addicts. That I can provide that,
Oh, I
Mr.
think
Chair.
they should have the availability. Listen, I know people,
So-
including members of my family, who've had a much worse time getting off of SSRIs than they did than people have getting off of heroin. It's the withdrawal period is, I mean, and it's written
actually have
on the
s-
label.
I have some
This is very
experience
well
with this
documented.
myself, Mr. Kennedy. This is personal for me. When I was a young woman and I was struggling with depression, thankfully, I had the resources to help me get through it, including a new generation of SSRI uptake inhibitors, which helped to clear my mind, get me back on track to being a mom and a wife and a productive, happy person. And I'm really grateful for that therapy. So I have some experience with this, and I think that everyone should have access to that care. And your job as secretary is to expand access to care, not to spread lies and misinformation. And you know, the things that you say, Mr. Kennedy, they live on. They have impact. And you know, we're having this conversation at the same moment that my Republican colleagues are looking to try to figure out how to save money any way they can. And so they want to cut Medicaid. Let's just think about this for a minute, because you're going to be, should you be confirmed, you would be responsible for CMS, which provides mental and behavioral health care to millions of Americans. Close to 40% of folks on Medicaid have a behavioral health condition. And you would be part of this administration that would be looking to cut Medicaid. So, Mr. Kennedy, these statements that you've made linking antidepressants to school shootings, they reinforce the stigma that people who experience mental health every day face every single day. And I'm very concerned that this is another example of your record of sharing false and misleading information that actually really hurts people.
Senator, you're
Thank you, Mr.
mischaracterizing my statements.
I am only putting into the record what you have said, Mr. Kennedy.
You're mischaracterizing my statements, and I'm happy that you had a good experience on SSRIs. Many Americans have very good experience on it. Others have
That
not.
would be an issue between them and their physicians, and not
Yes.
for
And
the
exactly.
future head of HHS to be just putting out misinformation
Exactly.
about the dangers of SSRIs and other antidepressant medication, spreading the stigma and the fear that we're actually trying to overcome.
Do you think physicians, when they make that prescription, ought to have access to good science?
Of course they do, and I don't
That's all I
think that.
believe, too. And you and I are in agreement, Senator.
And to your point that you made when you made these statements, it was not based on good science. I don't know what it was based on.
I was saying the science needed to be done. I was saying these are potential culprits. We're coterminous, and I named other things. I said video games. I said social media. I said SSRIs. SSRIs have a black box warning of suicidal, homicidal behavior.
Mr. Chair, I will submit to the chair the information that I have on school shootings. Thank you.
It does appear to be the case that she may have misrepresented what he said in terms of like they should be sent to wellness centers. It does not appear he said that. He did compare people that were on antidepressants to drug addicts.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Kennedy, I wanted to ask about your role in the 2019 measles outbreak in Samoa. In July 2018, 2 children died immediately after receiving a measles vaccine that nurses had mistakenly mixed with a muscle relaxant. The nurses get charged with manslaughter.
That's what it was.
But vaccination rates go down. I asked you about this in my office. You told me flatly that your visit to Samoa had nothing to do with vaccinations. We now know that's not true. I have the documentation. You met with the Prime Minister. You talked about vaccinations. You met with an anti-vaccine influencer who described the meeting as, quote, profoundly monumental for this movement. So what happens? Vaccinations go down, there's a measles outbreak, and children start dying. But you double down. You didn't give up. Just 4 days after the Prime Minister declared a state of emergency, 16 people already dead, you sent a letter to him promoting the idea that the children had died not from measles, but from, quote, defective vaccine. You launched
There's a senator that did her homework. There you go. That's how you do it.
You are a very influential man. In fact, you are called the leader of the disinformation dozen. UNICEF and WHO, the World Health Organization, investigated this. They say the claims are false. It is not biologically possible what you claimed. And yet, ultimately, more than 70 people died because they didn't get vaccines. So my question is, do you accept even a scintilla, just even a sliver of responsibility?
There you go.
For the drop in vaccinations and the subsequent deaths of more than 70 people.
There you go.
Anything you do differently?
That's how you do that.
No, absolutely not. There were 2 incidents.
That's how you do that.
Died. In 2015 and again in 2008. 2015, it was from the measles vaccine. That's what the New Zealand General Hospital found. The government of Samoa banned the measles vaccine after the 2018. I arrived in July of the next year after the ban had been in place for a year.
Mr. Chairman,
and the measles.
Understanding that you wanted to hold this to a minute and that I don't get to present all the facts and documentation I've got, how about if we just decide to make entries for the record on exactly what the record shows about Mr. Kennedy's participation? And I think he's answered the yes or no question. He takes no responsibility.
Senator Warren, we will do that. And Mr. Kennedy, and to all the senators, every senator knows that following this hearing, they will be able to ask you questions off the record, and you will be able to put answers back onto the record. So please give that answer. I apologize that we're shutting you off for giving a full response right now.